Hey, and welcome to Dr. G Speaks. I am Dr. Kristen Guillory, and I am so very excited to help you experience a life of freedom, faith, and fun you may not even realize is possible. Listen, I know you feel held back, I know you feel stuck, and I know you are hiding. As a coach and the author of Look, Stop Hiding, How to Find Your Voice and Never Dim Your Light Again, you will get to listen to some amazing stories, receive some homework, that's the professor in me, and get some tools to help you live the life you deserve. It's time to quiet the noise and walk in the fullness of who God created you to be. It's time to stop hiding and start thriving. Together, we'll uncover your potential and ignite your journey to a fulfilling life, a life of freedom. So have you ever had a calling or a pull or a desire to do something or support in a certain way or a certain group of people, but on paper to you it didn't make sense? Like, I really want to support parents and help parents in parenting, but I'm not a parent. I really want to support teen boys, and I am a woman, but I feel like I've been called to support teen boys. Have you ever had that and maybe you put it to the side because you disqualified yourself before it even got started? But if you look at your history and you look at your track record, you've been doing the work all along. You don't want to call yourself a chef. I'm not a chef yet. You've been cooking and baking for years, and people love your food and they tell you that you should do this. Well, for me, that was my case in terms of doing work with and for men. About 10 years ago, I was at a restaurant on a rooftop in Dallas, Texas with two friends. And we were talking about our schedule and talking about different things we were doing. And one of the women interrupted me. Her name is Rachel. Rachel lovingly interrupted me and said, "Have you ever considered being a speaker for men?" And I literally like froze. And I looked at her and I said, "Don't say that." Or, "Why are you saying that?" And she just said, "You do all this work for boys and you support men. Have you ever considered that being your audience?" Well, here's the truth. That was actually a desire deep down. I just never said it out loud because I am a woman. And in my mind, back then, you have to be a man to do this. Well, if I looked at my history and my track record, I've been supporting boys and men for years, starting even in high school when I had amazing guy friends who were legitimately just guy friends. And I've had people mention that over the years and just say, "These are your friends. You haven't dated them. They are your friends, and you always have such great male friends." As a mentor, I have mentored boys and I've mentored, high school students when I was in college. When I graduated from college, I went to my church one day and I wanted to have a meeting with my pastor to talk about starting a step team. I co-founded the Christian step team at my college, and it was around for about 2 years, and it would remain around for almost 10 years. So I go to my church to meet with the pastor, and 40 minutes into the conversation, I haven't said one word. He's talking about this desire to always have had this youth program, and it's going to be this, it's going to be called Rites of Passage, it's going to have this, and this. And he looked at me and said, "And you're the one. I've wanted this program for years, and you're the one." And I remember thinking, I just came in here to start a step team, okay? But I was excited and honored for this opportunity at 22 years old. They gave me an office. They gave me the title of youth minister and they paid me something. And I was like, "Wait, what?" So for the next 2 years, I would lead a program at this church for youth. There were about 20 to 25 youth in the program, and the majority of the youth were boys. And I remember a coach from one of the high schools calling me one day. And he said, "Hello, this is Coach blah, blah, blah. Is this Kristen?" I said, "Yes." He said, he mentioned two names. I'll just say Chris and Christopher. "Are Chris and Christopher in your program?" I said, "They are." He said, "What do you do?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "What do you do? Because I have never had in the history of being a football coach, I have never had players want to skip watching tape the day after a game to go to church. What are you doing? And I said, well, I mean, we meet every Saturday from 9 to 12 when we talk about different life skills things, and there's snacks and there are, scriptures we go over. We play a game. Maybe we go outside and play basketball. And he said to me, keep doing what you're doing. Don't stop, because I've never had that. For me back then, I didn't realize the gravity of what he was saying to me, that these amazing young men who were football players wanted to come to church instead of going to watch tape. I also underestimated the impact of me. So I would say, oh no, anybody can do this. Anybody can do this in my head. Anybody can do this. And I didn't realize that it was me. Like literally, I know it was the gift and the light and all of that in me that God allowed to do this, because me at 22, being able to create a 26-week program that was curriculum, and I had the parents involved in donating snacks. And at the end of the first year, I took the group to Atlanta. Y'all, I'm 23, coordinating a trip to Atlanta before all the technology was out there. I was in charge. I had, I think, 8 adults who came to be chaperones and support, but I coordinated the entire trip. I coordinated fundraisers, and I just look back at me. I look back at the Kristen at 22 and 23 in awe of her, but I didn't think what I was doing was extraordinary because it was necessary. And again, 70 or so percent of the youth in that program were boys. I remember one day the boys came over to my house and we were talking, and relationships came up, and they're all sitting on the floor, like with notepads out, just ready to take notes and listen to me. One of the young men in that group years later would say to me, I don't really understand why people say a woman can't raise a man. He said, I really hate when people do that, because he said, my mom and you raised me. So when people say women can't raise men, that's stupid, because women are doing it every day. Women are out here just doing the darn thizzle. Something, and I'm not knocking amazing dads, but I'm talking about women doing work for men. When there are athletes who make it big, they buy who? Their mom a house. We don't often hear them say, I want to get my dad a house. And again, I know there are amazing dads out there, but there are voices that say, oh, women, you can't. Yes, absolutely, they can. And I'm sure the women are open to support too. So that program, and then I start PhD land, and my dissertation is on school completion among African American boys. Because I remember thinking, the majority of the youth in this program are boys, and what's the difference between the young men here who are graduating from high school and young men in other circumstances who don't? What are the factors that do that? Because at that time, there were no studies that compared Black boys to Black boys. There were studies that compared Black boys to Black girls, Black boys to white boys, but they didn't compare Black boys to Black boys. So mine was one of the first studies back then in 2007. Then I got invited from time to time to speak to athletic programs for male athletes. Then there's a program in Dallas that supported individuals who were coming out of experiencing homelessness. And at the time, my organization called Cozy Convos was providing support to the women there. I got a call one day from one of the directors that said, do you do anything for men? Do you do like any programming for men? I said, well, I do. She said, because we really need something for the men here. And I said, great. So we talked about what to do and determined that there would be some type of luncheon. Like they called it Empowerment Lunch with Dr. Guillory. And they let me know that this was the most anticipated event where they had the highest number of registrants to come. And I knew why. I knew it was one of 3 reasons. 1, free food. 2, some of the men wanted to come to see, okay, what is this woman going to say to us about being a man? And 3, my picture was on the flyer. I'm not naive to the fact that some might have thought that I was cute. So I go to host this event, and it is fun. We are conversing. The men are talking to each other. The men are affirming each other. And here's what was fascinating. They didn't touch the food because they were so focused on what was going on. And I remember there was an activity that I was facilitating where I mentioned that time does not heal all wounds. It's what you do with the time, and some wounds will never fully heal. And there was a gentleman that said, Doc, wait a minute. I'm a Katrina survivor and I'm not over it. And I looked at him and I said, I'm so sorry. Are you from New Orleans? He said, yes. And I said, sir, how old are you? He said, 58. And it had been 9 years at that point, almost 9 years. And I said, so your home of 49 years was gone in a matter of moments. Of course, you're not over that. And he looked at me with such relief and said, I thought I was crazy. There was another gentleman at this event, and he said, he repeated what his partner, an activity partner, said to him. And all these years, I thought I was scatterbrained. And my partner just said that I'm a thinker. I never looked at myself as a thinker. The staff of this organization, one of the staff members said to me, I feel horrible. And I remember thinking, why do you feel horrible? She said, I forgot to look at these men as men with stories as opposed to a case number. So after that one event, the men are asking me to return. Hey, Doc, are you coming back? Are we going to dance again? Are you coming back? And so I went and visited with these men every month for almost 2 years. Very few people knew about that. I did not post it on social media. I get an email maybe 6, 7 months in, and the director said to me, the men have a Father's Day luncheon coming up, and they were asked to vote for who they wanted to be their speaker, and they wanted you. I was dumbfounded. I was a little confused. I was humbled. I was like, wait, what? They want me to be their Father's Day speaker? I am not a father. What? And they said they voted for you. And I was tremendously honored to do that. Fast forward to youth work I was doing in the community, and we were led to start a program for boys. We had a girls conference type of experience going on, and we started one for boys. And it was massively successful, and we would get, 40 to 50 male mentors to come to every one. I'm then a professor at a university, and the Black male football players got together every Tuesday. Well, I got an invitation from one of the advisors to come to one of those meetings, and they said, you're the first woman we're inviting. I was honored, and I went to the auditorium, and what was interesting, the young men wanted to hear from me. So there was another speaker, and they were like, we want to hear from her. We want to talk to her. And they said, y'all, she's coming up. So I gave them some encouragement, and I had them stand up, and we did some dancing, some merengue, which is a signature dance at all of my events, including my men's events. And the coach says to me, I don't know what you did to them, but you have my football players up here dancing. You are gifted. A couple days later, a few of those football players came to my office saying they needed support or that they were overwhelmed or that they weren't good. I've always had an ability to allow people to feel safe. Over the years, I've heard people say, well, men don't talk and men don't talk. And I would say, absolutely, they talk. Absolutely, they talk when they feel safe and not judged. Absolutely, they talk. So I'm hosting Cozy Convos that I mentioned earlier. We were hosting it at the facility for people who once experienced homelessness. And it was put on my heart to host something for men. And that was ignited on that rooftop in Dallas after Rachel asked me that question. And I thought, there aren't spaces for men to talk just so they can be. They don't have to be everything and have every solution. But I was petrified to do this. I was so nervous to do this because I'm a woman. So I reached out to 10 men and I had a script ready for every conversation. Like I had 10 separate conversations. The conversation essentially was, hey, fill in the blank. I know that men don't often feel this and men deal with this. And it's been put on my heart to host an event that provides men the space to be heard and seen and affirmed. What do you think? And I was nervous. Every single man said, I'm in. We need it. 2 men ended up in tears saying, Doc, you don't understand how much we need this. And I said to one gentleman, Like it just didn't make sense to me. I'm a woman and I'm doing this work. And he said, "Well, Kristen, it makes complete sense to me because it is a woman that Jesus told that he was resurrected. It makes sense. God uses women to do tremendous things." So I was preparing to host the first Candid Conversation for men. I was preparing to host the first Candid Conversations for men in 2016. I was nervous. I was excited. I brought men on to be facilitators. And the flyer did not have a picture of me. My name was so tiny because I had a fear that if people see that this is hosted by a woman, they're not going to come. So it said, like, whisper, Dr. Kristen Guillory presents Candid Conversations for Men. But here's the thing, I honored that Kristen in 2016 for doing it, even though she was scared, for doing it, even though she was nervous and had doubt. She didn't doubt her gift. She didn't doubt her ability to bring things out of people and provide safe spaces. But I was nervous. So I would host the first Candid Conversations, and men are coming to me saying, "I've never been to anything like this. This was incredible. I've gone to so many men's events, and this is the best men's event I've ever gone to." I'm hearing this over and over and over. I host another event, and I'm hearing the same feedback. "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." And at the time, I was member of a particular church, and the church had huge men's events that would take place from time to time. And I already had a meeting with the pastor coming up about some other stuff. And I thought, oh, well, I'm going to be talking to the pastor. I'll talk about Candid Conversations. And I briefly mentioned to him that I'd like to talk to him about it. And he said, sure. So I got on the phone call and I said, yes, I would love to bring a candid experience to one of the men's events because, there's some members of this church who've gone and they've said great things. And he said, yes, Doc, I've heard. I've heard that it is really great. Some of the men have told me about it. Salute to you. Congratulations. I said, yes, I would love to bring it. He said, well, I don't know if that would work here because the men really talk about personal things. I said, yes, absolutely. When those conversations happen, I'm not in earshot. When they're in their small group, I am somewhere else so the men can talk about it. Yeah, Doc, I don't know if the men would be comfortable with it. I just don't know with the woman if they would do it. And I was so disappointed, but it didn't stop me. So I told some of the men who participated in Candid Conversations and those who were members of the church or those who knew the pastor or knew things, they were so upset. I remember one saying, "What? We don't talk about anything. We don't get deep in these conversations. We keep it very surface." The deepest conversation I've ever had with a group of men was at your event. Another man said, "Oh my gosh, we're missing out." What? So it's because you're a woman. I said, well, I guess. Another one of my guys said, Doc, on one end, I get it. He said, on one end, I get it that, every woman can't be in the space and do that. He said, but Doc, he doesn't know your gift. He has to see your gift. And so Candid took a break, not for any deep reason. I had some other stuff going on and I never planned to bring it back. God began putting it back on my heart in early 2022 to bring it back. So we bring it back in October 2022. It is powerful. It is amazing. And I'm like, okay, great. Brought it back. My friend from high school, Lieutenant Colonel George, introduced me. And it was just beautiful, powerful. The men were so grateful. And I thought, okay, great. That's it. Then God said, no, do another one. So I would host another one in January 2023. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I'm going on a cruise and I need time to promote and I need time. And that event had even more men that came. I'm like, okay. Then God said, host a tour. You're going to do a Candid Conversations tour. And I thought, a tour? I don't want to do this. So in truth, around that time, I was struggling because it takes a different type of effort to get men to attend an event like this, that the word conversation is in it. Also, realizing that women register for things a little sooner than men do around topics like this. So I remember we were 3 days out and I'm like, "Okay, we only have this many men that have registered." And 2 of the men on the team said, "Dr. G, don't worry. The men are gonna register." One of the other guys said, "Listen, my boys are coming. They just may not register until they're on their way there." And I'm like, "Oh, Lord, this was stressful." And they did. And they would register to me last minute, but to them on time. And God said, "Do this tour." My struggle was all this effort to do this. And this is not any event that I'm making money. So Candid Conversations is not an income bringing event for me. And I never started it to be that. Let me just be really clear. And I remember thinking, God, I could launch one of my coaching programs, another coaching program, and make $100,000, make this amount, but you have me spending all this time doing this event for men with all this effort and they're registering late. What's happening? And I just was frustrated. And one day I'm talking to one of the guys who was part of the committee for Candid Conversations, and I was telling him a story. I told him about meeting with a colleague of mine who works at a university, and she said, "Oh, yeah, such and such attended your recent Candid Conversations event." I said, "Oh, I can't remember who he is." And she pointed him out. I said, "Oh, yes, yes, he seems like a great young man." And she said, "Well, you don't know is that he was in a really dark place before he came to your event where he was thinking about no longer being here." And I said, "What?" She said, "Yeah, that's why we were providing additional support for him because he was considering no longer being here." She said, "When he came in my office on Monday, he looked like a totally different person." Where I had to ask him, "What did you do? What happened?" And he mentioned that he went to your event and he was able to connect with a mentor and he was able to talk. And she looked at me and said, essentially, your event might have saved his life. I'm so grateful for that. I'm also so grateful that he had ongoing support. So I'm telling my committee member this story, and he looked at me, he said, "Doc, if there is still any doubt in your mind if you are supposed to be doing this, I hope that doubt is gone with that story." And I just started crying. I just started crying because there was doubt. There was. I could easily do this coaching program or this launch or this. Can I bring back Cozy Convos? Can I bring back my women's experience? Because women need this. I could get 200 women to register so fast. And God said, "This is where I have you." And I was not, in truth, I was not fully in until a couple months in. I said yes, but it wasn't 100% yes. It was a yes with some resistance. It was a yes with some doubt. And I finally completely surrendered probably April of 2023. So I brought it back. God had me bring it back October 2022. April or so of 2023 or May of 2023 when I finally just surrendered. No, I actually think it was later than that. Let me not lie. I think it was a little later than that where I finally just said, "God, you have my complete yes." Y'all, the tour, every venue was donated. It was so easy to find facilitators in every city. We took it to 6 cities, able to locate 10 to 15 men in every city to be facilitators. Every venue was donated. Most of the food was donated. Some of the DJs donated their services. Giveaways were donated. There was one event we hosted in South Florida, and the hotel donated space. And I told the events director that about 25 or 30 men had registered. And to me, that was not a big number. He said, "Wait a minute, you got 30 men to register for an event that's not about networking?" I said, "Yeah." "Oh my gosh, that does not happen." "What?" And I said, "Wait, what?" He said, "You don't understand. In this area, if it's not about networking and not about business deals, sometimes some of the men don't come out." And for me, that was perspective because 30 was not a big number to me. I'm like, 30, supposed to be 100. And we hosted this tour and it was beautiful and it was amazing. And the stories that have come because of Candid Conversations. I'm so grateful that God still works despite my doubt. God still works despite my resistance. God still works. And I'm so grateful that despite my doubt, despite my fear, despite my resistance, I still moved. I was still obedient. I still showed up and dedicated it. And I'm always honored every time. I'm always honored. And although I have seen similar things at these experiences, I'm honored every time. And I will say this with all confidence. I believe I am the only woman on this planet to have ever had the vantage point that I have of a group of men, in particular, a group of majority Black men, to have seen what I have seen up close and personal, to have seen these men seemingly turn into almost kind of teenagers who are open and ready to receive, to see this group of men who all get up and dance. And men have said, Doc, I can't believe you got me dancing. I said, I didn't get you to do anything. You chose to say yes. These men who have said to me, I haven't hugged this many men in my life. And we ended in prayer and we ended in hugs, to see men in the room crying and the men supporting them. There was a man that said to me, Doc, I came to your first event and I'm looking around like, that dude's dancing, the whole room of men are dancing. And then he said, next thing I know, the men are supporting and I see men crying. He said, I've never been to anything like that. It touched him so much. He is now bringing Candid Conversations to his city because he said, I've been to men's events and men's empowerment events, and they're great, but I've never been to anything like yours. Can I bring that? Can I host you and bring you in to provide that experience for the men in my city? And I said, absolutely. I've had men say, Doc, I don't ever speak at events because I have a stutter, and I felt safe enough to speak at your event. I've had people say, I don't ever open up, and I opened up. I had a man say to me, I don't ever talk about myself at events. Man, but this was cool. This was awesome. And I didn't need to have a drink. I always thought that to share, I needed to have a drink, and I didn't need one. Man, Doc. And the story that probably is the one that touched my heart the most. And in truth, there are hundreds of stories and messages I've gotten from men that have touched my heart. And I'm so grateful that God has chosen me to do this. I have had moms and sisters and wives and women friends reach out to me and buy tickets for their husband, partner, son, son in law, brother to come. I've had women reach out to me and say, Doc, my blah, blah, blah needs this. Thank you for what you're doing. I do not worry about people questioning that a woman is doing this anymore. So the story that touched my heart the most, I got a Facebook message one morning and it read something like this. Hi, Dr. Guillory. We haven't met. My name is, and I'm the wife of name. My husband passed away this morning and I needed to message you to thank you. Your space allowed my husband to be seen. When he walked in the door after attending your event, he walked in as a different person. He was free. My husband had always been put in boxes his whole life. Thank you for allowing my husband to experience freedom for the last months of his life. Even saying that right now makes me emotional for obvious reasons. At the event that he attended, he came a little late and he mentioned that he wanted to do this certain like adrenaline pushing thing. And I asked were there other men in the room who had ever done it. And I said, y'all, can y'all come up and come surround him? And he said, I've made some mistakes and I've done some stuff. And I asked these men to get up. It was about 7 or 8 men who got up, surrounded him, encouraged him. And I had no idea what that moment was going to do for him. And I had no idea that this beautiful man would no longer be with us just a couple of months later. For me, what this journey has taught me is trust God even when you don't understand. Because if He gave me the vision or the desire, He's going to fulfill it. He's going to give me what I need. that people don't have to understand. It's not even about understanding. I've had people say, not often, but I've had a few people say, "Oh, so you're not hosting this event to meet men?" I said, "Absolutely not. What?" No part of me, no part of me has ever hosted a Candid Conversations with any part of me with a desire to meet a man at the event. Never. That has never crossed my mind. Never. I have never gotten dressed for Candid Conversations and thought, "Ooh, the men will think this is cute." Never. 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 And my outfits are cute. Okay. I'm very particular about what I do wear. I've never done that. Like my thinking, it's not there. I've had people say, "Doc, I don't know." One of my guys said, "I don't know how you do it. These men, like we see you, Dr. Guillory, you're a pretty woman, but the men, we see you, but we are not just fixated on that. Like we get back to work." He said, "I don't know. You're just gifted." I don't know, because normally that would be all that we're focused on. And yes, we see you. And yes, the men are looking at you, but that you're gifted. And somebody else said that to me, like, "I don't know how you do this, but there's an anointing on you." It does take a special type of woman, a gifted type of woman to be able to do work like this. Am I the only woman to do work like this? No. But I did say I do believe I'm the only woman who's ever seen what I have seen at the level among a group of men, in particular Black men. So what's next for Candid Conversations? We're going to be hosting more events. I'm going to be training men to be facilitators of their own candid experiences. We are going to go back to hosting retreats. We've hosted 2 candid retreats. We do plan to continue to grow this, and I'm so grateful for the men and women who've been a part of the journey behind the scenes as volunteers, committee members, donors, facilitators, and more. So if you are someone, if you had a desire to do something, but it just doesn't make sense, it doesn't have to. If God has given you the provision and the vision and told you to do it, trust Him more than what you think society would say. Trust Him more than your doubt. And if you have doubt, move in spite of it. If He is said to move now, ask Him, "God, are you telling me to do something with this now? God, what do you want me to do with this? God, show me, give me the courage. Help me to reject janky. Help me to reject anybody that is doubting. Bring in the people who should be in alignment with this." Trust that. Trust that. Listen, I've shared in previous episodes that I will be hosting marriage experiences and that I've been supporting couples for years. I am not married. I have not dated in 12 or 13 years. I haven't even dated a lot in my life. I'm nowhere near being married yet. God has given me some discernment and wisdom and knowledge and more to be able to help couples. And I've had couples say to me, "Doc, whenever you do it, we're coming. I've been married 21 years. You've helped my marriage." There's so many couples who have thanked me. So what is that thing that's been on your heart to host and do or launch or write about or even go help? Maybe there's someone in your personal life that you want to offer them encouragement, but you doubt, "Well, I can't offer that because I'm not." There is a client of mine who is a brilliant child psychologist, and she is not a parent. And she said she's had some of her clients' parents say to her, "Thank you for reminding us of the gift of these children." She's also heard some people say, "Because you see the pureness in them, you see them in the ways we don't, you give that as a gift to us as parents." This is a woman who has an affinity for children. She sees them and adores them and loves them and wants to help them. That's been in her since she was probably a child and has nothing to do with her being a parent or not, right? Because let's just call it what it is. There's not a lot required to have a child. A lot is not required to have a child, to parent this child, to love this child well. Maybe the support from someone who is different might be just what's needed because the perspective and the vantage point is different. So whatever that is for you, honor that, do the darn thizzle, and say yes and trust God. Your affirmation is I say yes and move according to God's will, even when I don't understand. I say yes and move according to God's will, even when I don't understand. Thank you so much for listening to the Dr. G Speaks podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and family. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Deuces.